In this video, we'll talk about the top 3 reasons why your R's might be sounding weird. Specifically, this is for people that want to improve their American accent and their clarity for content, ads, and maybe sales calls on the back end as well. Because the goal of this is ultimately to help you make more money because you're going to position yourself as more of an authority and you're going to sound more professional and credible as well. Also, if you're wondering, why the hell should I even listen to this guy? Like, who is he to tell me anything about accents? I'm a foreigner just like yourself. I used to have a very strong accent until I changed it successfully using Hollywood accent techniques. I'm a professionally trained actor and I've been helping people like myself and yourself, specifically high-level online business owners, to change their accents using those same methods as well. So, what are the 3 reasons why your R's might be sounding weird? Well, number 1 would be roof contact. Number 2 is that you're just not making an R at all. You're dropping the R. And number 3 would be that your R is very weak. So let's break that down further, right? So what does roof contact mean exactly? It's exactly what it describes. Your tongue for an R should be going up high and pulling back. So the sides of the tongue are touching the inner sides of the upper teeth. However, in the middle, that's where you have to be really careful. If you actually touch, especially most people tend to do it quite quickly or maybe multiple times quickly, we will get either a rolled R or a tapped R. Rolled R would be r like that, multiple times, right? Kind of trilling. Whereas once would be r like that. So a word like hairy might turn into hairy, like this. Or maybe running would turn into running, like this. Or maybe worry would turn into worry, like this, right? Again, you want to really make sure that for an R, especially an American R, you never ever make contact with your tongue on the roof of the mouth, only on the sides there and the inner sides of the upper teeth. Moving on to number 2, right? That's not making an R at all, dropping an R. That means, right, we spoke about, okay, my tongue should be raising and pulling back to make an R. If I'm hearing something like pearl or ear or ca or sha instead of pearl, ear, care, share, that means your tongue is not really raising enough and not pulling back enough. Often people kind of intuitively know our tongue should be doing something, so we might hear something like a pearl, but we're not hearing enough of something there. So you have to raise your tongue high up and again pull back, and then you might have to experiment with the positioning a little bit. R's tend to be a bit of a harder sound for that reason, because you have to find a bit of that sweet spot, especially if you're not used to doing R's at all. But that is a very big issue. You have to actually attempt to make the sound. Very often people think they're making a bit of an R, but they're not really making it at all. The nice thing in American is that every time I see the R letter, I have to commit to that R sound. The only thing that's going to change is specifically the vowel right before the R. So for example, I could be getting R or ear or R, or, and that's going to be dictated by the spelling right before the R, which that's a bit of a separate topic, so we're not going to get into that today. But the most important thing is that when you see that R letter, you want to commit to that tongue position every single time. So again, my tongue raises up and then it pulls back. And the more I pull back, the stronger the R becomes. And this ties perfectly into number 3, which is, right, we're not making a very strong R, we're making a weak R. So instead of maybe having something like, if we just take a very simple drill, instead of doing ra, 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 what I'm hearing would be ra, 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 like this, which kind of ties a bit into the previous mistake. If the previous one is, right, we're not hearing an R at all, often it means our tongue isn't really doing anything. In this one, it means our tongue is kind of going up a little bit, and maybe pulling back a little bit, but not enough by far. If you're hearing something like, right, again, going back to maybe pearl or ear or care or share, if what we're hearing is pearl, ear, care, it's very weak. Again, you have to raise your tongue higher and pull it back more. Again, the sides of the tongue are touching on the inner sides of the upper teeth. Technically, there are kind of 2 tongue positions for an R. The easiest one to do would be where your tongue is literally raising like this, where the very tip of the tongue is just kind of sagging down, and the blade of the tongue, the area kind of right behind the tongue tip, that's what you're kind of picturing is pulling back all the way back, right? And then again, the more you move back, the more of your, like a strong, deep R you're going to get. So there's a bit of a range here. You can either kind of really overshoot, where you get kind of like a like that, which is a bit too far, not really that necessary. But for most people, they're not really used to making enough of an R yet, so it's much better to get a bit of a too strong R than a too weak R. So I'd much rather have you overcommit than undercommit here for sure. Now, if you want to get really good at R's, the main recommendation I would have that's very easy to implement right away would be to experiment a lot with the tongue position. The simplest drill you can do is just to do what I did earlier, which is ra, 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 like this. This tends to be a bit more available to most people to actually make a proper R here if you have problems in other R areas, because most of us have a very British influenced English. However, in British, the R letters between vowels are actually said the same way as in American. So if we have something like, right, Harry Potter, Harry, they say that sound in that as well. It's just in Potter at the end that they would say Potter, Potter, like they would drop that R. But in between vowels, that's where they actually keep the same R. So that's why very often if we do ra, 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 people have an easier time doing the R there than if I told you to maybe do, let's try it in pearl, because that would be one again where in British they would say pearl, pearl, and they would drop that R right there. Another good drill could be to literally hold an R for a while, because we can. So if you are able to hold it for, let's say, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and it sounds the same the whole way through, probably you're doing pretty well on the R. So it would be something like this, right? Like that. But if it sounds a little shaky, maybe you're getting like that. In this case, it means, oh, you're touching the roof of the mouth there. Like you're kind of raising the tongue very high, but it's a little too close to the roof of the mouth. And that's why you're getting kind of like an interference sound almost, like a very shaky R, or like an R that's, again, getting mixed with something else. In this case, again, if we touch the roof of the mouth, in that case, it's not even an American sound that we would get. So you have to really make sure that you're pretty high, but not too high, so there's a little bit of space still. Again, the sides of the tongue are specifically touching the inner sides of the upper teeth. And then beyond that, my recommendation would be to read a lot. Just seek out as much text as you can. It could be an Instagram caption, it could be the description under this video, any social media comments, but ideally it could be a book, an article, something that's a little longer and a little more meaty, I guess, so you can encounter as many words as possible that have R's in them. And then just every time you see an R word, you are going to commit to saying that R sound right there, just to get in the habit of doing that sound correctly and being very aware of it as well, because the goal here is, right, to build strong habits. I really like the Merriam-Webster definition of this. It's an acquired mode of behavior that is nearly or completely involuntary. So the goal here is, right, to get so good at the R that ultimately you don't even have to think about doing it at all. You can just focus on your message, the idea you're trying to communicate, right? But that requires a lot of practice. Typically, the phases here that I would outline would be to go with, right, understand. I have to understand how the sound works first. Then I have to drill a lot. I have to really go through a skill acquisition phase with very intentional practice. Then I have to simulate. I have to pressure test everything that I learned under much, 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 much harder conditions, which I got the benefit of when I was acting a lot. I would have to do what I was doing in an acting scene or in a monologue or in front of a class, in front of an audience. And that was the perfect environment to really pressure test everything that I was learning. So if you can go through that progression for basically every sound, then at the end of that journey, you're going to be super, super solid on that sound. But of course, that requires a lot of work. So you can either, if you want, you can do that on your own, which is going to take a little bit longer because self-study ultimately is not the most efficient for this. You will need really tight feedback loops on that. However, if you want to get outside help with this to cut down on the time it takes to get to that accent goal of yours for content, ads, and sales calls on the back end to sound more professional and credible, more like an authority, right? Then I would recommend to scroll down to the description below this video, and there are going to be 2 links right there. Number 1 is a calendar link where you can apply to work with me, and number 2 would be a link to my free community. Inside of the free community, I offer free accent assessments for people that are the right fit. All right, well, that would be it for today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.